Good evening. It is officially 7 p.m. and we are now going live. Good evening, folks. We're just gonna kick things off here with a little music. Waiting for people to join the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Lois. Good morning, good evening. What time of day is it? Oh my goodness. Good evening, how are you? Thank you for joining. Beautiful, Jesus, you are so beautiful. Bet y'all ain't know I could do that, huh? Who? Lois, it's just me and you in the room right now. We're just going to give it a few more moments. Waiting for a couple of more people to join. But as I always say, I don't care. If it's 1, 2, or 3 people, I'm going to talk anyway. It's because y'all going to watch the videos later. But they better join because I did my eyebrows for y'all. And I don't do my eyebrows for everybody. So, you're welcome. This must be important for me. It must be important enough for me to do my eyebrows. I'm gonna be honest. I don't do my eyebrows. If it's not important, I don't do my eyebrows for anything. You know? But this is important. So, I did my eyebrows. We're just gonna wait a few moments, wait for a couple of people to come into the room before we start tonight's discussion. I told you guys I was going to come back correct. I was going to come back right. So I got lovely scenery and backdrop going on for y'all I rearranged my room so I can have something going on so it'll feel, it won't feel like I'm talking through a camera. I did all of this for y'all. So y'all better come on into this room and let's start spilling some tea. Let's start spilling some tea about HIV. When you are in the room, I want you to go ahead and hashtag spilling the tea about HIV. I know it's a long hashtag and I know it takes a lot to type those keys, but guess what? I know your fingers are super fast. So if you are in the room, go ahead and yes, go ahead and get Michelle into the room right now, Lois. And get everybody else here too. But go ahead and hashtag spilling the tea about HIV if you are live in the room this evening. So beautiful. Jesus, you are. I am not, I'm not going to sit and act like I'm not a religious person. I am. Despite contrary beliefs and despite my lifestyle, I am a very religious person. And that is where my scenery actually comes from. I just paused the music for a moment because I just wanted to go ahead and put that out there. So anything that I say is always going to come from a place of love, a place of guidance. And look, if we get to praising the Lord in here every now and then, ain't nothing wrong with that. That's all I'm saying. So I'm just going to just enjoy a couple of more songs. Wait for a few more people to come in. I'm actually trying to finish up some notes. But we are here live. If you are in the room, Hashtag spilling the tea about HIV. And we're just gonna go ahead and rock along with some more music. How about a little more Michelle Williams in the morning? No, let's you know what? I don't know, let's say yes. How about that? Let's go with it. Bring it back. Bring it back.
When Jesus say yes, nobody can say no. 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 I'm not worried about a thing.
And you guys, I just want to say this video is also the first video that we do have that will be posted on YouTube as well. So this is the same video that's going to be on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Project Red. I'll be sure to link everything in the description. I'll be sure to let you guys know more about that as that's developing along. But as of right now, we're going to be using Facebook. I like Facebook Live. It's personal. You know, people entertain. People pay attention to it. People watch the videos. So let's go ahead and get this show jumping off. If you are in the room, I want you to go ahead and hashtag spilling the tea about HIV if you are in the room. I know it's long, but I know you can type it. If you can type everything else about Lil Uzi Vert, you can type something about that. Bet y'all didn't think I knew who it was. I know who Lil Uzi Vert is. Now what he's sing, I don't know. What he talking about, I don't know. But I know. And that's all that matters. I'm sitting here right now trying to share the video around, trying to get a couple of more people into the room. I really can't tell who's in the room right now. I know Lois is back in the room. And it told me someone else as well. But we're going to find out in a second. Oh, you know what? It's probably me because I'm sitting here on my computer. Right now trying to share it. It's, you know, when you're working by yourself, you have to do everything by yourself. So we're going to get started in a matter of moments though. So we're going to get started about 7:15. We'll kick it right on off. Right on off. Let's see what else page I have to share this on. Shout out to U equals U campaign. U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmittable. That's right, people. You've heard it from me first. Or not first, but you heard it. If you are living with HIV and you are undetectable, that means you are 92% less likely to transmit the virus to someone else. So U equals undetectable. U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmittable. Just want to go ahead and get that out there. That takes lots of work. That means staying on your medication regimens. But those are topics for another show. Today's topic is breaking down the stigma against HIV. We're going to break down that cycle and talk more about that. But I'm trying to share this around. I'm a part of a whole bunch of different groups. Just want to put the video out there. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. You did. I have my cousin. She's in the bedroom with me. I will put on camera, but she is not camera ready. She's not camera ready. She's far from that. Far from that. But y'all better come on in this room now. I done put these eyebrows on. Somebody gonna watch me. I'm serious. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and kick the show off right after this song right here. Need Your Help, Michelle Williams again. I love this album, y'all. Journey to Freedom. And no, she is not paying me to say this. It's actually a really good album. It really is. Y'all don't do. Y'all better get off Michelle. Don't do Michelle. Y'all be all on Michelle. But y'all don't know Michelle got the hits, honey. She got all the hits. And the best parts on all the songs, in my opinions, for that matter. But we're gonna kick it off in about 5 more minutes. Like I said, about 7:15. We're gonna go ahead and dive into our topic for the night. Let's share. Give me directions. I don't wanna go out of your will, waiting on a word from you. Oh, how I need you. If you are in the room, hashtag spilling the tea about HIV. We're going to be kicking off in about 4 minutes. I promise you guys. We're going to have a great talk. It's not a lecture. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm not here to act as if we're in the classroom. This is a discussion, so I want you guys to ask questions. I want you guys to engage. Like I say, I have dual screens going on right here, so I can see you guys' questions as they come up on the live video. But please interact. I am here to answer your questions. I am here to answer your concerns. I am here to help you demystify and destigmatize HIV/AIDS and help you get a better understanding of what we go through as far as living with the virus, as far as the effects that the virus have on our body, and more things. But we're going to get started in about 3 more minutes now. 3 minutes. So y'all better come on, get in this room. We got 3 minutes, Lois, to get everybody to this live video. Alright. Watch the live video later. Don't be driving trying to watch it. I know how y'all youngsters do. Alright. Oh, how I need you. 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 Yeah. One more place. And after that, we're going to go ahead and kick the show on. We're going to go ahead. And then I'll share it around later. Oh, how I need you. Oh, how I need you. Oh, how I need you. Oh, how I need you every day. Needing you every day. Needing you every. All right. What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Spilling the Tea about HIV, and here I am, live and in color. This is Isaac D. Joseph here, your host of hashtag Spilling the Tea about HIV. As I've always said, I don't care if there's 1, 2, or 3 people in the room. I'm going to go ahead and kick the show off and get to talking about tonight's topic. This is the first official live broadcast, as well as first official episode of Spilling the Tea about HIV. This video will be posted to our YouTube page a little later, our Project Red YouTube page. And we're here to have fun. I am not here to give you guys a lecture. I am not here to be a professor. I'm here to give you accurate information. I'm here to talk with you about HIV. We're here to have a conversation. So I want you guys to be engaged. I want you guys to ask questions. I'm here to answer your questions. I'm here to demystify and destigmatize HIV and people living with the virus. Just a few quick things before we get started. Boom. The Epidemic, Living with HIV in the 21st Century by Isaac D. Joseph is available on Amazon, The Book Patch, and Lulu.com. The Epidemic, Living with HIV in the 21st Century by Isaac Joseph is available on Amazon, The Book Patch, and Lulu.com. 70% of all proceeds are going towards to help the AIDS Foundation of Houston and other organizations that are out there helping to destigmatize HIV. Let's go ahead, and I just want to talk like a little bit about the format of the show here and what I'm going to be doing. Each week I will be putting out a segment or a show about a particular topic surrounding the issues that people living with HIV have, or about HIV, and other little random things that are adjacent to that are related to HIV. So just want to get one thing clear here. The show is called Spilling the Tea About HIV, and we are here to spill all the tea about HIV that there is to know, but we are also here to have conversations about real life issues, especially as they relate to people living with HIV. Just want to go ahead and just talk a little bit about the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. The cycle of HIV stigma and how it affects HIV/AIDS and people living with HIV/AIDS. Tonight we're going to be talking about the cycle of HIV/AIDS stigma. There is a cycle, and everything in life has a cycle. It has a way that it starts and a way that it ends. And a lot of times, if we are able to break these cycles, we are able to change things in not only the way we view things, but also in ourselves and in our lives. And the cycle of HIV stigma is one of those things. Earlier this week, I posted a picture in regards to the cycle of HIV/AIDS stigma. And it simply shows where the stigma starts and where it ends, and how it continues to go around. But before we even get into the cycle, we have to understand the root of the cycle, which is stigma. As I said, I'm not here to give you information about HIV. If you want information about HIV, you know what? You can go look it up on HIV.gov. Because for me, I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of people saying, well, we didn't know about this or we don't know about that. The information is at the tip about this, it's at our fingertips. All we have to do is type in the information that we're looking for in our computers and in our phones, and the information is right there. So I'm not here to give you the facts, although you will get some facts and you will get some clarity of some things. But once again, I'm here to talk about stigma and demystifying the stigma of HIV/AIDS, and I'm here to talk about how HIV/AIDS affects my life and how it has affected the lives of others and the things that we have to deal with. That's what I'm here to talk about. But we're going to talk about other things as well. If you want to know the facts, of course, we'll have a show on the facts, but as of right now, that isn't the focus. The focus is stigma. And what is stigma? Stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. That is the definition of stigma according to dictionary.com. Stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. To me, that doesn't sound like something that's good. Stigma, anything that stigma is associated to, a mark of disgrace, that doesn't seem like it's something good. And I want to demystify the stigma against HIV/AIDS. I want to remove the stigma from that, because stigma to me is like it's like venom. It's like venom of a poisonous snake. And as it flows throughout our body, it paralyzes us, inciting fear and panic. And within our minds, we are just consumed with so many different thoughts about a particular issue or circumstance, such as HIV, such as homosexuality, such as racial issues. Once a stigma is attached to it, our mind becomes consumed, and that stigma turns into a prejudice. That prejudice turns into discrimination. That discrimination turns into a silence, to where we just get used to it and we don't talk about it. That silence eventually turns into fear, because for the people who have to live their lives in this condition, they are now fearful of the reaction that they may get from others. I know for myself, it was stigma for a very long time that kept me from not getting tested. I did not want to find out, and it was stigma that held me back. And from stigma, I really never planned on telling anyone. Stigma was the reason for that. Stigma was the reason I was afraid to talk about my story, my issues, and the things that I have dealt with, being homosexual, being black, being male. And stigma is the reason behind all of those fears. And once again, that cycle is stigma, prejudice, discrimination, silence, and then fear. And that is the cycle of HIV/AIDS stigma right there. Stigma, at first it starts with stigma. Then that stigma turns into prejudice. That prejudice turns into discrimination. Discrimination turns into a silence. And then that silence turns into a fear. A fear of being who you are. A fear of being yourself. The cycle of HIV/AIDS stigma begins with the virus itself and the lack of education on HIV/AIDS and its transmission. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment. If you are in the room, hashtag spilling the tea about HIV to let me know that you are here. But as I was saying, the cycle of stigma, it begins with the virus itself and the lack of education about HIV/AIDS and its transmission. You guys, the information that we need is at the access of our fingertips. All you have to do is get on Google, type in HIV, and it tells you everything that you need to know about HIV and its transmission. But still today, there is a lack of education. That lack of education incites stigma, and it incites misconceptions, fear, and panic, thus forming a conscious and unconscious prejudice, discrimination, and judgment about HIV/AIDS and people living with HIV/AIDS. Let me repeat that, because you guys, like I said, I take notes. I'm here giving you the information, giving you my thoughts right here. So, but as I just said, because of the lack of education, stigma incites misconceptions, fear, panic, thus forming conscious and unconscious prejudice, discriminations, and judgment about HIV/AIDS and people living with HIV/AIDS, thus forming the cycle of stigma. And with many cycles, with many stigmas, the first thing that's not the first thing that starts is the misconceptions, and the misconceptions come from the lack of education that we have on the subject. One of the many misconceptions is the belief that the HIV virus will always lead to AIDS, which is untrue. The HIV virus does not always leads to AIDS. People living with HIV can live for a very, very long time. They can live happy, long, and productive lives. Another misconception is that that all HIV positive individuals will eventually develop AIDS. And once again, that's not true. We can live a long and happy, healthy life with HIV. Maybe have some mountains and some hurdles to climb, but we can live. And that's what I'm here to say to you guys, that HIV isn't anything that you should be afraid of, that you should be fearing. Fear the virus, of course. The virus is something that you should fear. I wouldn't wish anyone to have HIV. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, knowing what I'm going through and knowing the things that has happened. But as I was saying, the first formulation in the cycle is stigma. And stigma begins with the many misconceptions about HIV/AIDS and the people living with the virus. One of the most common misconceptions is that HIV will always lead to AIDS, and that eventually people with HIV are going to die off. Well, yeah, eventually we're going to die off, but it won't be because of HIV. It'll be because of something else, because with one pill a day, we can live 100 years now. So, another common misconception about people living with the virus is that you can get the virus from being around people who are HIV positive. HIV isn't spread through touch, tears, sweat, saliva, pee, or any other casual contact, So, thinking that you can get the virus from someone just from being around them, it's common. It's one of the most common things people are going to give you when you ask them, what do you know about HIV? These are these many misconceptions then lead to the second formulation of the cycle, which is prejudice. So the lack of education of HIV/AIDS leads to a prejudice against not only the virus, but people living with the virus. Like I said, the virus is something that you should fear. The virus is something that you should fear, and I say that because in order to guard yourself against the virus, fear equals caution, caution equals precaution, and precaution equals prevention. But fearing people and having a prejudice against people living with the virus, it's uncalled for. Many people around the world experience this prejudice to where they are thought of as the new bubonic plague, or as if they are lepers in their societies, and they are just treated so wrong and so harshly, kicked out and abandoned, left on the street to die. In many countries in the not the Middle East, in many countries in Africa, when a child is born with HIV, that child isn't cared for. That child is discarded. From what I read, correct me if I'm wrong on this information, but from what I've gathered, that's what happens. But these many misconceptions formulate prejudice against people living with HIV/AIDS, and they are formed both consciously and unconsciously. When you think about the definition of prejudice, it's a preconceived notion or opinion about a particular subject, person, or people. So a prejudice is a preconceived notion, meaning you knew nothing about before. You had no prior knowledge of this, but you formed an opinion about a particular subject, person, or people just because you heard that it was what it was. So from the lack of education, from the first seed of stigma, it comes to prejudice. That prejudice then turns into discrimination. And when you think about discrimination, it's the unacceptance, it's the, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's the dislike. When you think about discrimination, it's the dislike of someone just because they are a way that they are, or they have what they have. From prejudice, the next step is in the cycle is discrimination, or the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things. That's what discrimination is. And the cycle, it affects us all in a negative way, because once you have this stigma that has been created, misinformation and preconceived notions are starting to form. How are you, Amina Thomas? Thank you for joining in. But preconceived notions are already formed, and now you're just feeding the cycle of stigma. And when you're feeding the cycle of stigma, you are not only hurting the people living with the virus, but you're also hurting the community as well. And how are you hurting the community? The cycle of stigma, it always leads to a silence. It always leads to silence. Stigma always leads to silence. We don't talk about anything that's taboo. We don't talk about anything that's different from our norm. We don't talk about anything else. In fact, within the heterosexual community, HIV isn't talked about at all. But in fact, and I'm going to blow your minds here, you guys, worldwide, heterosexual people lead HIV infection rates. Worldwide, heterosexual people lead HIV infection rates. It is only in a few countries, like the U.S., where the epidemic disproportionately affects gay and bisexual men and the African American community. But around the world, heterosexual people lead in the infection rate. And HIV isn't advertised to the heterosexual community. It's advertised as if it's only a gay thing. It's not advertised as if it's a people thing. You know, guys, sometimes I wonder if the narrative would have been different. What if the first person who brought the virus to the United States had been a heterosexual male or a heterosexual female, and it attacked the heterosexual community the way that it attacked the gay community? Would the response have been different? And not only would the response have been different, but would HIV be seen in a different light? Because for me, I really do feel that HIV is seen in a negative light because of the people that it affects. It's because of the information that's put out there about the people that it affects. In the United States, HIV is targeted towards the gay community and only the gay community. It's not targeted towards the heterosexual community. It's not letting them know that in the U.S., heterosexuals account for 25% of all HIV infections within men, with men accounting for 33% and women accounting for 19%. It's not telling us that. It is telling us that if you're gay, you're going to get HIV. That's what it's telling us. It's telling us that if you are gay, bisexual, or black, your chance of HIV it's just as high as your chance of getting cancer. I'm just putting it out there. I'm just going to say it. That's how I feel that the information is being relayed. But, like I say, it's not telling you that in the U.S., heterosexuals account for 25% of all HIV infections, with men accounting for 33% and women accounting for 19%. It's not giving you that information. And this is what the cycle of stigma does. This is what the cycle of stigma against HIV does. It creates a screen over our eyes to where we don't get the information and we don't seek out the information. From these misconceptions, a prejudice is formed. From that prejudice, discrimination is formed. And most discrimination, in my opinion, is really due to the lack of ignorance. It's to the lack of education, and it's due to pure ignorance. In doing my research for my book, I found that as of 2016, there are only 22 states that teach a comprehensive and inclusive sex education curriculum, a sexual education curriculum within our middle and high schools. And in most of those states, fewer than half of middle and high schools teach all 16 critical topics that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention recommends to teach. And this includes HIV/AIDS. So the information isn't getting out there, and our youth is being affected by the virus as well. But this is what the cycle of stigma does. And this is how we continue to feed the cycle of stigma, because we don't talk about it. We don't open up the dialogue. We take HIV and we internalize it to a certain group of people. And as long as we only have to worry about that certain group of people, then everybody else lives carefree. But that isn't the case. HIV is something that affects everybody. HIV is something that it's a people's disease. It's a people's virus. But moving along, the cycle of stigma is set up for people living without the virus to fear not only the virus, but people living with the virus. And people living with HIV, we are not scary. We shouldn't. Do I look scary? No, I don't. I look sick. I look sickening. That's what I look like. Get into this mug. Get into these cheekbones. Get into these brows. Get into the smile. Get into all of it, darling. I'm sorry, I just had to have a queen moment, because guess what? I'm HIV positive, and I'm seemingly happy. I'm not gonna be honest. Depression is it's a motherfucker. We're just gonna be real. Depression is a motherfucker. So I'm seemingly happy as long as I can stay, as long as I take the right medication. But anyways, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show. But that's what the cycle does. And once the cycle gets us from not talking about it, it makes us scared of it. And like I say, it makes us scared of the virus and people living with the virus alike. And like I said, the truth is, you should be afraid of HIV/AIDS. You should be afraid to catch the virus. You should be. In order to guard yourself, you have to have fear against something. If you are not scared of lions, then you will go and play in the lion's den. But I'm scared of lions. So I'm going to do whatever I can do to guard myself from them. So I have to have a fear of lions in order to guard myself against them And it's the same thing about HIV. You have to have a fear of the virus in order to make sure that you take the proper steps and proper precautions to protect yourself from the virus, you know? Because fear equals caution, caution equals precaution, and precaution equals prevention. But what you shouldn't be scared of is people living with the virus. The issue with stigma is that most people can cope with being HIV positive, but it is the labels that come along with being HIV positive that drives people to substance abuse, alcohol abuse, and suicide. I can honestly speak for myself on two of those topics. After finding out that I was HIV positive, I did develop a substance abuse issue. I began to use cocaine as a coping mechanism to deal with the fact that I was HIV positive, to deal with the thoughts that were going on in my mind, me believing that I was going to die, that this was going to happen, and I developed a substance abuse issue, which eventually led to me trying to commit suicide, not one time, but 5 times, actually, and trying to overdose on as many drugs as I can, drinking as much alcohol as I can, anything that I could do to feel numb. And it wasn't the fact that I had HIV that scared me. It was more so about what people were going to think, and about the labels that were already attached to me. Here I am, young. I was 22. Well, I was 24 when I found out I had the virus. But here I am, a young African American, homosexual, black male living in America. I already got 10 strikes against me. Now let's add HIV. Now it's a whole nother ballpark. Now it's not just other people looking at me for who I am. It's everyone. It's my own community. It's my own society. It's my own community. It's my own family. It's my own friends. Within the LGBT community, we are so hard on each other that we don't even show compassion and understanding for people who are HIV positive, because we put them in a box. We put people who live with the virus in a box. We put people like myself in a box. Dating when you are HIV positive is hard. It's hard. I have been fortunate enough to have someone in my life to where I did not have to really just go out on dates, but during our breakups, because we've been together for 5 years. I mean, of course, we've broken up and got back together several times. Like, that's a whole nother show. But but even with that, I come to find out dating while being positive is hard, because within the LGBT community, there is a real big stigma against guys who are positive. And like it or not, believe it or not, they want to say it or don't say it. No one wants to be with someone who is HIV positive. I've actually had people say to me, that they think that all gay HIV positive men should date each other or be put on an island together. That way they can either infect each other even more and just die off, and maybe that cure it. No, it doesn't work like that. The virus is spread for that very reason. It's because of the stigma that's attached to it. Because that stigma creates that silence creates fear. That fear means I don't disclose my status when I sleep with my next partner, And I don't talk about my HIV status to anyone. You know, and that's the one thing that I don't think people realize when they talk about HIV is that when you stigmatize people living with the virus, you're doing more harm to yourself than you're doing to them. You know, because when you stigmatize us, it put us in a box and make us fearful to talk about the virus and who we are. You pretty much sign your own certificate to receive HIV, because, and admitting this live on camera, I've been with people and I didn't tell them that I was HIV positive because I did not know how they was going to react. During times when me and my situationship, I only said that because he's online. My situationship, during the time that we've had our breaks, I've been with people and I did not tell them that I was positive because I was afraid of the rejection. I was afraid of how they might accept me. I did not want to be rejected. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be wanted. I just made sure that I had the necessary prevention methods, i.e. condoms, when engaging in sexual activity with those people. I just made sure that we used the condom. You know, was it wrong of me to do that? Yeah, it was. It was wrong of me to do that. But it's not like they asked. It's not like they asked if I was HIV positive. It's not like they asked if I had any STDs or any diseases that they should be concerned about. It was more, you know, let's do the do and be done. But when you stigmatize people living with HIV, you pretty much sign away for our non-disclosure. Now I'm scared to tell people that I'm HIV positive because I'm scared that I won't be accepted. And in many countries around the world, that's what happens. In many places like Botswana, Nigeria, Tanzania, the Congo, other places that are plagued heavy with the virus, that's generally what happens. You become scared of telling people that you're HIV positive because you are afraid of how they are going to react to you. You are afraid of how they are going to come at you. In many of those countries overseas, people living with HIV are beaten, burned, killed, thrown out on the street, left for dead. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it's all because of the lack of education on such a livable and treatable virus. You know, today there are life-saving medicines that keep people living for years, allowing us to live long, full, and healthy lives. But when you are diagnosed HIV positive, you are given a label. And it is because of this label that people don't seek care or even care to get tested. But people need to understand that HIV is something that's treatable. People also need to understand that how labeling an HIV positive person will not only affect them personally, but also our treatment as well. But it also affects society as well. As we move along, I just had a few points that I wanted to hit. Another point that I wanted to hit was what types of prejudice and discriminations that people living with the virus face. And I've talked a little bit about that when I said that in many countries around the world, people living with HIV are seen as pariahs. They are beaten, outcast, exiled, and suspended from not only society but their families too. Finding out that you are HIV positive in countries such as India or Africa can only mean two things: that you have engaged in homosexual activities or you were born with the disease. And if you have engaged in homosexual activities in those countries, that's a whole nother beating and a whole nother story. Most children born with HIV in these countries are left abandoned by their mothers, who are the very reason that they are HIV positive. You know, not saying that the mothers had a choice in them being positive, but medicines are available, and we try to make medicines available, not just here in the United States, but all around the world, to those living with the virus. So some things still kind of shock me when I read them. The conscious and unconscious prejudice and discriminations that most people living with HIV experience is not done by words, but it's done by actions. It's in the way that you talk. You don't talk to someone who has cancer and say, hey, you know, how's your cancer? You know, you don't say those things to people. You know, but I get asked quite often, hey, how is the HIV thing going? Well, thanks for reminding me that I was dealing with something. Maybe I wasn't trying to deal with that today. But I get asked, and not that it bothers me, because it doesn't bother me, but it bothers some people to get asked that question. Like, you know, it's like I said, you don't ask someone that's dying of Alzheimer's, hey, how's your Alzheimer's? Hell, they don't know. They don't even remember that they got it. Why? So you don't ask those questions. But it's most of the prejudice and discriminations that people living with HIV experience is not done by words. It's done by actions. It's done by the way that you do things. It's done by not inviting me to the cookout because I'm a positive person and you don't want to make everybody else nervous, or throwing away my silverware after I'm done eating, after I'm done using them, because you don't want to wash it with your silverware because you think it's going to get infected. I'm just throwing out crazy things that I have read, that people have said. But the most common unconscious prejudice that people living with HIV/AIDS, it comes in the form of a label, like I said. You know, we are no longer seen as a person. When we are diagnosed HIV positive, we are now seen as the virus. And we are not the virus. We are still people, human people with emotions. We are still human people with feelings, you know. The HIV stigma, it affects us in so many different ways. It's unbelievable. Within the cycle of HIV/AIDS stigma, there's another cycle, and as well, and it is the part of the cycle of stigma that affects those like me living with HIV/AIDS. The effects of stigma, prejudice, and discrimination are both damaging to people living with HIV/AIDS and society. As stated, HIV/AIDS stigma extends from the lack of education, and that lack of education creates misconceptions about the virus, and next thing you know, it's just pure ignorance from there. You know, the cycle ultimately ends with the virus and people alike being feared due to the prejudice and discrimination of HIV/AIDS. And with, like I say, this fear causes people living with HIV to become reclusive. We don't talk about the virus. We don't become more transparent about the virus. We simply just go on. You know, and as we go on, we break down mentally, we break down emotionally, because we feel that people feel a certain way about us. And this all extends from stigma and not talking about HIV and not talking about the virus. Stigma also keeps those living free of the virus from talking about it. Silence is the #1 reason HIV/AIDS infection rates are gradually rising. And for people living without HIV, your chance of catching the virus is even higher now that HIV/AIDS is something that's affecting the population. And even though there has been an 18% decline in the annual HIV infection rates, there are still more than 1.1 million people in the U.S. alone living with HIV/AIDS. And 1 out of 7 people don't even know that they are infected with the virus. So what that tells you about your chances of catching the virus? If we continue to stigmatize HIV, we continue to not talk about it. Meaning, you have a 1 out of 7 chances of catching the virus. That means 1 out of 7 people are infected with the virus and don't even know. With more than 1.1 million people living in the United States with HIV/AIDS, it's you, the people living free of the virus, who should be wanting to know more, should be asking for HIV tests when you go get your checkups, should be asking your partners, hey, when was the last time you were tested? Straight, gay, bi, whatever. You should be doing these things, because asking your partners their status, it gives you a choice. It gives you a choice. And people living with the virus, we have to be open about these things. If someone that we are about to engage in sexual activity asks if we're positive, we need to be honest about it. We need to give them a choice. We don't need to trick someone into sleeping with us. Give them a choice, because it's their life. It is their life, and you have to give them a choice, you know, of having the burden. You have to think about it. And this part, it kind of makes me emotional when I think about this, because a lot of people are infected because they just didn't know their partner had it, or they just didn't care to find out. And this is something that makes me mad, because we make excuses. You know, you have to ask these questions. You have to ask people, are you HIV positive? You know, have you had an HIV test? There are more than 1.1 million people in the U.S. living with HIV/AIDS. In the U.S. alone, and 1 out of 7 of them don't even know that they are infected. Why wouldn't you want to know? Why wouldn't you ask? You know, that's something that it frustrates me, as you can tell. It does. It really does. But it gives you something to think about. How does stigma affect those living without the virus? Well, that's how. That's how it affects you. You know, it increases your chances of catching the virus, because HIV just isn't affecting gay, bisexual, African American people. It's affecting everyone. Just like I said earlier, heterosexuals account technically for the highest infection rate worldwide, but in the U.S. they account for 25%, with men being accounted for 33%, and with women counted for 19%. So it gives you something to think about. Trust me, they're gonna watch the video later. So, you know, that's why I'm okay with continuing. You know, I don't have to be in a room and 1,000 people have to be viewing. I'm not here to get views. I'm here to give out the information to those who want the information. And I will continue to be committed to give that information to those people, you know, that want information. If you want the information, then watch the video. If you don't, oh well. But you can buy a book, though. It's for charity, and everyone loves charity. But anyways, what can we do to end the cycle of stigma against HIV/AIDS? Ending the cycle is no easy feat, but first thing we could do is have more direct communication, like what I'm doing now. I'm talking about it. I'm coming at you. I'm being for real with you. Hey, y'all, HIV ain't no joke. Going through the ups and downs of switching medicines and changing this and changing that, it's no joke. HIV is crazy. The neuropathic pains that I get, it's just not, it has not been pleasant. It's a lot. You know, I've had to battle with depression. I've had to battle with substance abuse. I've had to battle suicide, all stemming from one thing, me being HIV positive. It's a psycho-emotional roller coaster ride that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. You know, and I'm sorry, I just got sidetracked because these brows are snatched. They are good. They are real good. Hey, Candace, thanks for joining in. But what can we do to end the cycle of stigma? We can have more direct communication targeting everyone and not just a particular group of people. We can start, for one, we can start talking about HIV in the heterosexual community. My work really isn't geared towards the LGBT community because everyone is geared towards the LGBT community when it comes to HIV/AIDS. You know, my work includes the LGBT community because I would never forget them. Those are my people. But I want the information to reach people who are unaware how HIV can possibly affect them and that they need to be on the lookout. And by having that more direct communication and targeting everyone and not just a particular group of people, we can start to break down the barriers and the walls that we have built that has allowed stigma to grow around HIV/AIDS. You know, we also must start to normalize the virus and disease just as any other chronic illness. Yes, HIV is a sexually transmitted disease. The most common way to get HIV is through sex. That's why it's considered a sexually transmitted disease. But once you have HIV, and once HIV starts to affect your body, it becomes a chronic illness. As of right now, I have HIV, which is a chronic illness. And society has to once we start to normalize HIV and just get it away from being an STD, because it's more than just an STD. Once we start to normalize the virus and disease and see it just as we do any other chronic illness, we'll be taking a step forward towards that compassion and understanding of the virus and people living with the virus. Because then society will start to understand that the virus is treatable, it's livable. So we have to start normalizing that. Society must also realize that living with HIV/AIDS or being diagnosed with HIV/AIDS is not a cakewalk. For most of us, being diagnosed with HIV positive is traumatizing. Oh my goodness, it was the face crack of the century for me, people. When I was diagnosed with HIV, when the doctor gave me that diagnosis, I crumbled. All I could do was smile. All I could do was smile. I just had a smile on my face, but on the inside, I crumbled into a million pieces. And it's, you know, it can be quite traumatizing and can have lasting effects both physically and mentally, because it is a chronic illness, and chronic illnesses can have long-term effects, and HIV does. But as I stated previously, we can all learn more about this if we, people living with HIV, become more transparent about not only the virus, but ourselves as well. We go through so many emotional cycles, and that breaks down our mental states. We become fragile, we become recluse, and we become scared, we become anxious, we become all these things, and it's okay that we become these things because we're human. Being diagnosed with a chronic illness is not supposed to be something easy. If somebody told me today that I had cancer, I would not be taking it well. If someone told me today that I had heart disease, I would not be taking it well. If someone told me today that I had cirrhosis of the liver, I would not be taking it well. HIV is a chronic illness, and being diagnosed with HIV, I understand. I understand. But what sets HIV aside from cancer and from heart disease and from cirrhosis of the liver is the compassion and understanding of the illness and the people who have it. Yeah, the people who have the virus may have made a mistake in their life. The people who have the virus more than likely engaged in homosexual activity. They more than likely shot up, a needle and got the virus, But we made a mistake. I was a whore. I'm just going to put it out there. I was very promiscuous. I played Russian roulette all the time. I was also raped as well. And that's how I became infected with the virus. Me going through what I had to, me going through that. And that'll be a topic for another day. So we're not going to even get into that because I don't have time for tears, not today. But in the line of work that I was doing and the lifestyle that I was living at that time, I was sexually assaulted and infected with the HIV virus, and that was a double whammy for me. But I was able to cope with being HIV positive, but I haven't been able to cope with the response that people have to me being positive, to the response that society has had against me being positive. I don't like what's going on out there with the healthcare. Our government health, the medicine that I need is expensive and it saves my life. And I wasn't prepared for that, but I'm prepared to do something about it. And that's why I'm here. And I feel like if people living with the virus talk about it, if we come out of the HIV closets and just yell, yeah, I'm positive. Yeah, I have issues. But so does everybody else. You have people living with cancer talking about their platform. You have people living with heart disease talking about their platform. The only person I see talking about HIV is Magic Johnson. And I'm sorry, I don't think too many people are listening anymore. I don't think too many people care. Magic Johnson don't even talk about HIV anymore. But we have yet to normalize the virus or the disease. So therefore, the time is now to speak up about it. The time is now to say that I am HIV positive. I have a chronic illness. I have been traumatized by my diagnosis. I have suffered depression, substance abuse, alcohol abuse. I've even battled with thoughts of killing myself. I don't want to make any excuses, and I can't blame anyone else for my issues or my problems, but the reasons that I wanted to kill myself, the reasons that I did the drugs that I did, that I drank the alcohol that I did, it wasn't because I was scared of being HIV. Well, it was because I was scared of being HIV positive, but I was also scared of how society would treat me. I was scared of the response that I would get back from people. I was scared of being rejected. I was scared of becoming a pariah. In the movies, that's how people living with HIV are portrayed. We are portrayed as if we are the worst people, as if we have some deadly communicable disease that's just airborne, and it's not the case. If we continue to feed the cycle of stigma, we will continue to promote prejudice and discrimination against those all around the world living with HIV/AIDS and suffering from HIV stigma within their own countries. People living with HIV/AIDS are nothing to fear. We want the same thing everybody else wants. We want to be treated with nothing but dignity and respect. But unfortunately, it's something that we have to fight for, because ignorance is abundance, and there are still a lot of people out there in the world who are uneducated on what HIV/AIDS is, and uneducated on the issues that surround people living with HIV/AIDS. People are most certainly unaware of the personal issues that a person living with HIV/AIDS go through as they battle the process of finding out their diagnosis and finding out that they are HIV positive. And that's something that I'm ready to bring to the forefront. I'm ready to lay all my shit bare, is what they would say. I'm ready to lay it all out. I'm ready to put my hands up to it, and I'm just ready to tell you how it is. And I'm ready to give you the information that you need. This first episode of Spilling the Tea about HIV has been about the cycle of HIV stigma and how it affects people living with HIV/AIDS. Once again, the cycle of stigma begins with the virus itself and the many misconceptions and lack of information given about the virus, creating stigma. Stigma first seed is prejudice. Prejudice turns into discrimination. Discrimination turns into silence. Silence turns into fear, and fear promotes a stigma, a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. And here at Project Red, and what I am here to do, along with my organization, Project Red, I am here to demystify and to destigmatize HIV and the issues surrounding HIV. And I am also here to inform people of the issues that we deal with personally, mentally, physically, and emotionally. I know this first episode was a little heavy, but I wanted to go ahead and get that one out of the way I wanted to go ahead and so I can get your attention so you can understand. I wanted people to understand that this isn't a game. This isn't a joke. This is real life. And this is my life. You know, I'm here laying it all out. And the first thing that I want to get out there is the stigma. We have to end the stigma. And once the stigma is broken down, we can start to break down the barriers and the walls that have been erected around HIV/AIDS, and we can start to talk more openly and feel more comfortable to talk about HIV. Feel more comfortable to disclose our HIV status to not only our family and friends, but also to our sexual partners. This has been the first episode of Spilling the Tea with HIV. And if there aren't any questions, I don't see too many people in the room. I know that the video has been shared, and I know that the video will be spread around and tagged and everything else. We have to end HIV stigma. We have to end the stigma against HIV and the people living with it. We are nothing to fear. I don't look scary. I look sickening. And that's all I have to say for tonight. I want to thank you all for joining me on this first episode of Spilling the Tea about HIV. I also just want to continue to thank all of those who are supporting me and my movement, all of those who are reading the books. I am happy to say that I have more than over 200 reads on Amazon Kindle. So as long as y'all reading, I'm getting paid. But it's all for charity anyway, so woohoo. It's all for charity anyways, you guys. Like I said, just remember The Epidemic, Living with HIV in the 21st Century by Isaac D. Joseph. It is available on Amazon, the Book Patch, and Lulu.com. If you get it on Amazon, you will also get the ebook free. Just to let you know that if you buy the book on Amazon for $14.99, you will also get the ebook free, so you can have your copy wherever you go, or you can get your paperback copy and share your ebook copy with a friend. So I do thank you all for joining me tonight. I do thank you all for hanging in there with me on such a heavy topic. I promise you that from this point on, some topics may be heavy, but they're not going to be this heavy, and they probably won't be this long. I just want to thank you guys for joining in tonight. This has been Spilling the Tea about HIV. I am Isaac D. Joseph, and I am signing out. Love, peace, and chicken grease. Bye.